I am Emily Briggs, 39 years old, captain in Army Intelligence, and I got divorced by email while deployed in Syria. It was 44 degrees in the shade, dust clinging to every surface, when I opened my inbox and saw it. Subject line, "Let's be adults about this." My first thought was that it was about the house refinance we had discussed last year. My second thought stopped my heart cold. I'm about to share something personal, but first, drop your city or country in the comments. Let's see how many hearts this story can touch. The message was 3 sentences long. I've filed for divorce. I've emptied the joint account. I've moved Tanya into the house. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. My breath caught somewhere between disbelief and rage, but my hands didn't shake. I just sat there staring at the words. I read them twice, then once more, slower, like repetition would change them. It didn't. I clicked reply, typed a single word, understood, and hit send. Then I closed my laptop and walked out into the sun-soaked courtyard like nothing had happened. My uniform stuck to my back. Sweat, or maybe something colder. I showered in silence, dressed for duty, and reported for the shift like I'd slept 8 hours. No one noticed anything. That was the point. Later that night, I lay in my bunk under the hum of recycled air, and that's when the numbness settled. Not grief, not confusion, just something heavy and quiet. I stared at the ceiling until the dark blurred into the pale blue of dawn. I wasn't surprised. Not really. The signs had been there, subtle shifts. Rick stopped asking how my briefings went, started staying late at work, kept his phone face down on the table, new cologne, new energy, new coldness in his eyes when we FaceTimed. I'd ignored it, buried in training and mission prep, told myself I was imagining things. I wasn't. I should have known when he didn't say I love you at the airport. He just said stay safe, like I was someone else's responsibility now. What Rick didn't know, what he never understood, was that I've never been the type to fall apart. I'm the type who watches, waits, plans. By the time I deployed, I had already moved our critical documents into a rented storage unit across town. Birth certificates, military benefits, VA mortgage paperwork, with my name only. I'd opened a private account at another bank and diverted part of my paycheck, just in case. Rick thought I was predictable, thought I'd be devastated, thought I'd fall apart in a war zone. He was wrong, understood. I typed it, read it once, and hit send. Then I sat there for a full minute, fingers still resting on the keyboard, heart not racing, but tightening. Like the moment before a detonation, when the wires are pulled and you're just waiting for the impact. Except this explosion was internal, quiet, and precisely measured. Control is everything when you're deployed. Your weapon, your thoughts, your reactions. You don't get the luxury of breaking down, not when every day you wake up knowing you might need to keep someone else alive, or yourself. I learned a long time ago to separate emotion from action. It's the only way you stay standing. Still, I couldn't move. Not yet. My laptop screen faded to black while I sat motionless, jaw clenched, staring into the dark reflection of my own face. Divorce. Tanya in my house. Our money gone. Our? No, his name hadn't been on the mortgage. Just mine. VA loan, my service, my right. I shut the laptop slowly, deliberately. Every movement deliberate now. Stood, walked to the mirror above the sink in the corner of our concrete barracks. My eyes were clear, no tears, no red. I splashed water on my face, not because I needed it, but because it was part of the checklist, the routine, hold steady, move forward. I didn't tell anyone. At Chow, I sat across from Lieutenant Harris and nodded at his dumb story about someone tripping over a camel. I even smiled, not because I felt like it, but because I needed them to believe I was fine. Because the moment you show a crack, people start watching, whispering, doubting. Later that evening, my squad sergeant asked how my family was. I said, doing fine, nothing new. He nodded, satisfied, and walked away. But inside, gears were turning, rapid fire. Rick thought he'd pulled something off, waited until I was out of the country, out of reach, out of the equation. He thought a short email and a clean bank sweep would break me. It didn't. It woke me. By lights out, I had already logged into the backup bank account I opened last year, the one he didn't know about. I checked the balance, intact. I reviewed the storage unit access, secure. Scanned my digital folders of scanned documents, untouched. I didn't feel pain, not yet. What I felt was movement. Sharp, focused, deliberate movement. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't even respond. I'd wait. And when the moment came, I'd strike exactly where it mattered. The signs were there, clear as day. I just didn't want to see them. 3 months before deployment, Rick started coming home late. Traffic was a mess, he'd say. Every time. Spokane doesn't have traffic like that. Not at the times, he claimed. I knew it, but I didn't push. I was neck deep in prep, command briefings, intelligence reports. My head was overseas before my body was. That's how it goes in this job. But Rick, he started changing. First it was the cologne, a new scent, stronger, something expensive I didn't recognize. When I asked, he said, it was a sample from work. He worked in IT. No one's handing out designer samples in a server room. Then came the gym routine. He hated the gym, always said running was stupid unless you were being chased. But suddenly he was there 4 times a week. I offered to go with him once. He laughed, said it was his me time. His phone had a new lock screen, not just a PIN anymore, facial recognition too. He'd leave the room to take calls, whispered ones, late at night. I once walked in and he jumped like I'd caught him stealing something. He smiled too fast, too wide. Work stuff, he said, and kissed me like he wanted to distract me. It worked. I told myself it was nothing. Stress. He was acting weird because he was scared. I'd be gone for 8 months, maybe more. I told myself he was processing in his own way. And part of me believed it, or wanted to. We stopped sleeping at the same time. I'd head to bed early, drained from briefings and training. He'd stay up just 1 more episode. When I woke up, he was already gone, mornings without coffee, without conversation. One night, I came home to find him sitting on the back porch, staring at the dark like it was speaking to him. He didn't hear me come in, just sat there, motionless, drink in hand. When I touched his shoulder, he flinched. You okay? I asked. He smiled barely. Just thinking. About what, he never said. The day I left, he hugged me like someone closing a door gently behind them. No tears, no real goodbye. Just a kiss on the forehead and, stay safe, all right? I remember standing at the gate, duffel over my shoulder, wondering if he'd even watch me walk away. He didn't. And still, I told myself we were okay, that we'd make it through, that every couple has rough patches. I was trained to spot patterns. I knew how to detect shifts in behavior. I could analyze data until it made sense. But when it came to Rick, I ignored it all. I didn't plan for betrayal, but I planned for something. I've seen what happens when soldiers come back to a life that's been gutted, bank accounts drained, locks changed, kids they're no longer allowed to see. I've heard the stories in mess halls and base gyms, quiet, bitter confessions from people who gave everything and came home to nothing. So I paid attention, not because I thought Rick would ever do that to me, but because I've learned to trust my instincts. And something in me was tightening, even months before deployment. I didn't confront him. I didn't throw accusations. That's not how I operate. What I did was make a list, 1 item at a time, quiet, methodical, controlled. First was the storage unit. I rented one on the other side of town, under my maiden name, paid 6 months in advance, no questions asked. I filled it with what mattered, my birth certificate, military awards, deployment orders, the deed to the house, VA loan, my name only. I packed my mother's wedding ring, my service pistol off duty, my journals, and the letters from my dad when I first joined the Army. Things I wouldn't trust to stay behind in a shared closet. Then I opened a second bank account, different branch, no shared access. I didn't transfer much, just enough to cover me if I came home to a 0 balance. I rerouted a portion of my paycheck, small enough that Rick wouldn't notice, large enough that I could stand on my own if I needed to. He never asked. The week before I left, I made sure my will was updated. My emergency contact list, my service record, everything filed, digital copies encrypted and stored on a drive only I could unlock. Rick thought I was just being thorough. "You always go overboard with prep," he joked once, watching me organize my field gear for the 5th time. I smiled, shrugged, let him believe that. Let him believe I was just another wife going off to war, trusting her life and her marriage to stay intact while she was gone. What he didn't know, what he'll never fully understand, is that I'm not a victim. I don't make noise. I make moves. So when that email landed in my inbox with its smug little subject line and cold-blooded confession, I didn't panic. I had already packed the escape hatch. He didn't cry. I wasn't expecting tears exactly, but something. A catch in his throat. A flicker of panic. A real goodbye. But Rick stood there like he was dropping me off at a conference, not watching his wife deploy into an active combat zone. His hands were in his jacket pockets. His mouth was pressed into that thin, polite line he used with strangers. I had my duffel slung over one shoulder, orders in hand, and 2 hours of sleep behind my eyes. The airport terminal was half empty, too early for tourists, and too late for excuses. I reached for him first. He hugged me back, but it felt practiced. A formality. "I'll text when I land in Kuwait," I said. He nodded. "Okay, just stay safe, all right?" That was it. No, I love you. No, I'm proud of you. No, come back to me. Just stay safe. I looked at him then, really looked, searching his face for something that might break through the dull quiet in my chest. There was nothing. No fear, no pain, just detachment, like a man who'd already made his peace with absence. "I'll miss you," I added, almost softly, almost like a question. He gave me a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Of course. Of course. I don't remember walking through security. I don't remember the metal detector or the pat-down or the long walk to the gate. But I remember glancing back, just once, and seeing him still standing there, arms folded now, already turning away. The thing about soldiers is, we learn to shut things off. Fear, pain, hesitation, you wrap them in steel and tuck them under your vest. But I felt it, right there in that corridor, with the blinding airport lights and stale air. Not heartbreak, not even betrayal, just the weight of something ending, quietly, without ceremony. The plane took off at 06:03. My seatmate was an army medic on her second tour. We talked for a bit, just enough to be polite, and then we both went silent. I closed my eyes but didn't sleep. Instead, I kept replaying that moment at the terminal. The way his hands stayed in his pockets. The way he didn't look back. I should have known. But part of me, some foolish, loyal, stubborn part, still thought maybe this was just how he coped. That maybe he'd be waiting when I came back. That maybe the cold distance would melt once I was gone. It didn't. Rick wasn't losing his wife that day. He was already done. The base didn't care about my broken marriage. It cared about intel, about strategy, about precision. Syria wasn't forgiving, and neither was my job. I buried myself in it like a woman on a mission, because I was. Every morning I woke before reveille. Every night I was the last to leave the ops tent. My reports were flawless, my timing brutal. People started calling me Clockwork Briggs. No one dared ask why. During the day I moved like a blade. Sharp, clean, controlled. I filled silence with orders, reports, tactical updates. I didn't have room for pity or small talk. The war demanded everything. It didn't care about Rick, about Tanya, about the email still sitting in my inbox like a loaded weapon. But at night, when the radios went quiet and the sand settled in the corners of my cot, the fire came back. I would lie in the dark, eyes open, staring at the ceiling of the barracks, replaying every glance, every cold shrug, every missed call. I saw Rick's face the day I left. Too calm, I heard his voice in that email, detached, surgical, like he'd drafted it weeks before and was just waiting for my boots to hit foreign soil before he pulled the trigger. Sometimes I wanted to scream. Other times, I wanted to laugh. He really thought I'd fall apart, that I'd crumble under the weight of it. Instead, I was sharpening. The betrayal burned hot, but I kept it buried, deep under regulation and routine, letting it simmer, letting it forge something stronger. Lieutenant Marshall asked me once if I was doing okay. We were reviewing drone footage, and I must have zoned out for a second. He said my jaw was locked so tight he could hear my teeth grind. "Fine," I said. He nodded and didn't ask again. That's the thing about soldiers. They know when not to push. Every night, I watched the sun die behind the wire, the sky bleeding orange into purple, and I felt the fire settle back in. Rick was home, living easy, sleeping in my bed, drinking from my mug, touching someone who wasn't me. But I was here, focused, alive, becoming something he didn't count on. He left me when I was thousands of miles from everything we built. He thought distance made me powerless. He forgot who I am. The mess hall was loud. Laughter, boots dragging over concrete, trays clattering. I was halfway through a plate of something that barely resembled beef stew when my phone buzzed in my cargo pocket. At first I ignored it. Probably another mass alert or a weather warning. Then it buzzed again. I pulled it out, thumbed the screen. Bank alert. Withdrawal of $16,500 from joint account. Another buzz. Balance remaining. $4,237.11. I stopped chewing. I stared at the screen, numb for half a second. Then the app updated again. New transaction. $9,700 pending. In seconds, it was down to just over $3,000. I lowered my fork. The stew went cold instantly. Around me, conversation swirled on. Two corporals arguing about a soccer match, a lieutenant cursing at the coffee machine. Normal noise. None of it touched me. I unlocked the app. The transaction history looked like a slow bleed. Not a single massive hit, but dozens of medium-sized ones, spaced out perfectly. Withdrawals, transfers, payments to names I didn't recognize. And it hadn't just started today. This had been happening for weeks. I felt a sharp pulse of heat rise under my skin. My hands didn't shake. I didn't panic. But something inside me shifted, solidified. "Everything all right, Captain?" someone asked from down the table. I looked up. Sergeant Tran. He had a spoon halfway to his mouth. "Yeah," I said. "Just some account stuff." He nodded and went back to his food. I stared back at the phone, my face reflected faintly in the screen. This wasn't just Rick getting a head start on single life. This was a calculated, deliberate sweep. He was draining us before I even touched U.S. soil again. It wasn't about money, it was about control. Leaving me with nothing, making sure when I came back, I wouldn't have options, no cushion, no footing, just the echo of a life that used to be mine. But he'd underestimated me. I stood up, dumped my tray, and walked straight to the base communications tent. I didn't even wait for the attendant. "I need to make a call," I said, voice flat. They handed me a headset and connected me to the bank. I stood in the middle of a hot, dusty room and listened to the operator confirm my worst suspicions. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "these transfers began shortly after a secondary user accessed the account profile." "Secondary user," I repeated. "You mean my husband?" "Yes, ma'am. The access device and IP are consistent with your home address." I thanked her, hung up, and walked out into the dry heat. The sky was clear. The base was alive with movement. And I stood in the middle of it all, knowing everything was burning. But I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I didn't sleep that night. I went back to my bunk, tucked my phone under my pillow, and stared at the underside of the metal frame above me. Everything was still loud. The base, the hallway, my thoughts. I lay there for hours, my breath even, body still, mind unraveling transaction by transaction. At 04:30, I gave up on sleep. I got dressed, boots tight, uniform crisp. Same routine, always the same. Outwardly calm. Inside, every wire was burning. By the time the base's phone center opened, I was waiting outside, arms crossed, headset slung around my neck. I kept my expression blank while the soldier at the desk logged me in. He asked if it was urgent. No, I said, just account stuff. It felt like the right lie. The call to the bank was short, efficient. I gave them my credentials, confirmed the security codes, passed every verification. Then I asked them to read me the transaction history from the last 8 weeks, out loud. The withdrawals started 2 days after I landed in Syria. First small ones, $800, $1,250. Then bigger hits, $9,400, $11,700. Names I didn't know, accounts I'd never seen. Rick had been transferring methodically, careful not to trigger alarms, clean, organized, cold. Can you tell me when the transfers began increasing in size? I asked. Yes, ma'am. The pattern escalated in week 4, about the time your deployment became officially logged in our system through VA records. Of course it did. I closed my eyes. My pulse was steady, too steady. I'd like to freeze all activity on this account, I said, immediately. The rep hesitated. You'll need the joint owner's permission for that, Captain Briggs. No, I said flatly. I don't. He's committing financial fraud. I have proof, and I will escalate this to the proper legal authorities. She went quiet, then, understood, initiating temporary freeze pending investigation. I hung up, removed the headset, and walked straight out into the morning heat. The sun hadn't even cleared the horizon yet, but it already burned my skin. I welcomed it. I needed the sharpness. I needed to feel something real, not the fake warmth Rick had left behind. I stood still, breathing slowly, counting to 10 in my head. Once, twice. I didn't scream. I didn't punch a wall. I didn't call him. Instead, I walked back to my quarters, logged into my private account, and checked the balance. Untouched, secure, waiting. Rick thought he was clever. Thought he'd move faster than I could. That I was too far away, too distracted, too loyal to fight back. He forgot what I do for a living. I analyze patterns. I decode threats. And I don't lose ground without a plan to take it back. The first time I logged in, I hesitated. Not because I wasn't ready to see it. I was, but because some part of me still hoped I was wrong. That maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe the transfers were for something practical. Maybe Tanya wasn't real. Or maybe she was just a name, not a presence. I opened the app, entered the passcode I knew Rick hadn't changed. He didn't even remember it existed. He never cared about the cameras. I'd installed them myself before my last deployment. Interior and exterior, just in case. The first image loaded slowly, pixels shifting into shape. It was the living room, my living room. Couch I picked out. Throw pillows I bought. Nothing had changed, except the people. A woman stood near the kitchen island, mid-30s, blonde, yoga pants and bare feet. She held my coffee mug, the green ceramic one with the chip on the handle, the one I took with me on every PCS move since Fort Campbell. The one Rick always said was too ugly to use in public. She was using it, and there he was, Rick, shirtless, casual, like Sunday mornings used to be, laughing at something she said. Leaning against the counter, I refinished myself on my last leave. His hand grazed hers, familiar, comfortable. Scout barked in the background, my dog, my girl. She bounded into the frame, tail wagging, tongue out, happy as ever. Tanya leaned down and gave her a treat. My stomach twisted. I should have felt rage, should have slammed the laptop closed, screamed, thrown something, but I didn't. I just watched. Watched the stranger laugh in my kitchen. Watched my husband smile like nothing had ever broken between us. Watched my dog forget me. It wasn't the betrayal that cut deepest. It was the ease, the normalcy, the way it looked like they'd been living this life for months. She sat in my chair at the dinner table. He poured her wine into the glasses we got as a wedding gift. They clinked them together like it was any other night. Like I'd never existed. I paused the footage, rewound, watched it again, slower. I took a breath, then opened the settings menu and turned on audio. They were talking about refinancing, Something about freeing up equity before he got tied up in paperwork. She laughed, said, "Better now than when she gets back." I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't call James, not yet. But something in me shifted, quiet and permanent. This wasn't just personal anymore. This was war. I stared at the closed laptop for a long time. The screen had gone black, but the image was burned into me. Her hand in his, Scout at their feet, my home folded around them like it had never been mine at all. And I realized something right then. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't shattered. I was sharpening. The betrayal didn't paralyze me. It focused me. I stood, cracked my knuckles once, and grabbed my field notebook from the nightstand, the one I used for classified briefings and recon plans. This time, the mission was personal. First item, James Callahan, former Army JAG, now a civilian lawyer with a reputation for making problems disappear before they make headlines. We'd served together in Mosul. He owed me one, and he hated cowards. Next, bank escalation. I needed full account histories, not just summaries. Internal notes, sign-in logs, IP addresses, anything that placed Rick at the center of the transfer trail. I knew they'd stonewall me without cause. Good thing I was building a cause. Then, emergency leave request. Not for emotional breakdown, not for family matters. No. This was under Section 701, legal and financial distress due to fraud. I'd have the request routed through my CO before lunch. Proper chain of command, no drama. I made another note. Freeze refinance attempts. I remembered something Rick had mentioned 6 months ago. Maybe we should unlock some equity. I hadn't thought much of it. Now I knew exactly what it meant. I had to make sure no one could touch that house without me knowing. I flipped the page. Evidence. I logged all my screenshots, timestamps, footage backups from the security feed. I saved them to an encrypted drive and uploaded a copy to a secure Army Cloud folder labeled Deployment Assets. Let them try to delete it. Then I wrote the last word on the page in capital letters. Leverage. This wasn't about revenge. This was about consequences. About showing Rick that I hadn't been asleep at the wheel while he plotted behind my back. About showing her that you don't just step into someone else's life like it's a clearance sale. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to give them anything they could use. I was going to move in silence, with precision, and land exactly where it hurt most. Not because I was angry, but because I was ready. I waited until the base quieted, just past 2100, the kind of silence that settles in after the last round of gear checks, when even the heavy doors stop slamming. I ducked into the comms tent and asked for a secure line. Overseas encrypted routing, no monitoring. They didn't question it. Rank has privileges, so does stillness in your voice. When the line clicked live, I didn't hesitate. Callahan? His voice was sharp, clipped, always had been, like he was permanently bracing for incoming fire. It's Emily. A pause. Briggs? Damn, I haven't heard your voice in 5 years. Wish this was a social call. I doubt you do anything socially, he said. Talk to me. I gave it to him straight. The email, the account, the footage, the woman, the refinance whispers. I didn't sugarcoat any of it. He stayed quiet the entire time, not even a hum of acknowledgement, just the occasional scribble of pen on paper. When I was done, he exhaled. You think he's still moving money? Unless he's already emptied it? And the house? I'm betting he's setting it up for a sale while I'm out here wearing body armor. He cursed under his breath. Jesus, all right. This isn't just a bad breakup. It smells like fraud. Financial, maybe even criminal. You said he forged your name on anything? Not yet confirmed. But if there's a refinance, I'll bet my pension it's not with my signature. You're probably right. Another pause. You've got proof? Security camera footage, bank transactions, IPs matching our home. I'm gathering more. You're thinking about pressing charges? I hesitated. Not yet. I want leverage first, control, then truth. Charges come last. He chuckled, dry and pressed. Still a tactician, I like it. You keep quiet about this, don't confront him. Don't give him a single signal you're onto him. That's how you keep the upper hand. That's the plan. I'll start digging, he said. You'll hear from me in 48 hours. I want full access to those recordings. Forward everything encrypted. Label it Alpha Cold. I smiled slightly at the old ops joke. Alpha Cold? Because this one's not about fire. It's about freeze. Freezing his assets, his plans, his lies. Copy that. Briggs, he added before hanging up. Yeah? Sorry he turned out to be this guy. I didn't respond. There wasn't anything to say. The email came in at 4:13 in the morning. Subject, Alpha Cold. Attachment, signature compare, PDF. I opened it before my boots were even laced. James didn't waste words. He had written only one line above the file. It's forged. No question. I clicked on the attachment. 2 signatures appeared side by side. One was from the refinance papers. The other was mine, pulled from my military ID. To most people, they might look the same, but not to me. The middle initial was wrong. The E in Emily curved too much. The B in Briggs was stiff, like someone had copied it slowly, trying to fake my style. Someone tried to be me. And they failed. At the top of the page was the number. $340,000. Taken out against my house. The home I paid for with my VA loan. My name. My service. We never talked about refinancing. Not seriously. Rick had only mentioned it once. He said, maybe we should take advantage of the market. What he really meant was, maybe I'll steal from you while you're thousands of miles away. I called James as soon as the sun began to rise over the desert. You saw it, he said. I saw it. He did it 3 months ago, James told me, and he didn't act alone. Tanya, I asked. No, he said. A man named Daniel Spencer, real estate agent, helped file the refinance. Your name is listed as the borrower. Rick forged your signature. Spencer did the rest. I sat down hard on the edge of my cot. He used my deployment, I said, to take money from a house in my name. James was calm but direct. They're planning to sell it, Emily. This refinance was just the first move. They listed the house as a short-term sale asset. That means they're trying to move fast. I looked at the screen. My fake signature stared back at me. What do? I asked. We freeze everything, he said. The accounts, the title, the sale. But first, you need to file an official fraud report. Bank, county clerk, housing authority. That signature gives you power. Use it. I remembered Tanya laughing in my kitchen, wearing my sweatshirt, drinking from my mug. Do it, I said. I'll handle the rest, he replied. When I ended the call, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt one thing only. Focus. It wasn't just Rick. That part stung more than I expected. I'd already accepted the betrayal, already burned through the shock and the ache. But knowing he hadn't just cheated or emptied our accounts, knowing he partnered with someone like her, that was something else. James called that afternoon, voice low and clipped. I ran her name, he said. Tanya Ellison, 36, 2 arrests, 1 for prescription fraud in 2018, dropped on a technicality, the other for identity theft. She took a plea deal, no jail time, but a record. I stayed silent, jaw clenched so tight I could feel it in my temples. She's not just some rebound, James added. She's practiced, knows how to move under the radar. And he brought her into my house, I said quietly. Worse, James replied. She co-signed the refinance. She signed as a financial partner on your property, not just support, not just paperwork. She's on the loan, Emily. My fingers dug into the edge of the table in the comms tent. It was scratched with names and unit numbers. People who passed through, left their mark, then moved on. I wasn't moving on. Not yet. They're trying to sell the house, I said. They will, James answered, unless we shut them down. But that co-signer detail, that opens another door. If she's using her legal identity, and Rick pushed this loan through with a forged signature, We've got them both on federal violations. Fraud, conspiracy. I closed my eyes and saw them again. Standing in my kitchen, Tanya petting Scout, Rick smiling like his hands were clean. Maybe they thought I'd never find out. Maybe they thought I'd come home too late to stop any of it. They underestimated what distance really means when you know how to close it. She's not just part of this, I said. She's helping run it. Looks that way. I stared at the floor for a long time after we hung up. Let the weight of it settle. This wasn't a broken marriage. This was a calculated operation, and I wasn't just the abandoned wife anymore. I was the mark. But not for long. I'd fought bigger threats in worse terrain with less warning. I'd dismantled networks with fewer clues. This was personal, but it was still tactical. They thought they'd buried the evidence beneath distance and silence. But I wasn't done digging, not even close. The leave orders came through faster than I expected. I kept it quiet. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just handed the form to my commanding officer, packed my bag, and disappeared between the barracks shadows before dawn. No one asked questions. Maybe they sensed something in the way I moved. Steady, surgical, focused like someone going on a different kind of mission. The flight was long, but I barely registered it. I watched clouds peel past the window, terrain shifting beneath us like another world. Somewhere below was my home, or what used to be mine. When I landed, I didn't call anyone, not James, not even the base where my mail still forwarded. I powered down my phone, switched SIM cards, and took a cab into the city. When the driver asked where I was headed, I gave him the name of a business-class hotel on the edge of downtown Spokane. The front desk clerk asked for ID. I handed over my passport and a credit card linked to my private account. The name was mine, but I didn't use my rank. Didn't mention military. I was just Emily Briggs, traveler, here on personal business. They gave me a room on the 7th floor with a view of the river. I pulled the curtain shut the second I walked in, dropped my duffel beside the bed and sat down on the edge, letting the silence press in. For the first time in months, I was back in my own country, breathing familiar air, but nothing felt familiar. I didn't drive by the house, not yet. Instead, I showered. Hot water, real pressure, not the weak stream from the base's steel pipes. I stood under it longer than I needed to, letting my body remember what comfort felt like, letting my mind sharpen. Afterward, I wrapped myself in a towel and sat at the desk, opened my laptop, logged into the security system again, my house, my dog, the kitchen I remodeled during my last leave. Everything looked the same, which somehow made it worse. Rick was there, so was she. They looked comfortable, too comfortable. I watched for 10 minutes, didn't flinch, didn't feel anything at all. Then I closed the laptop and opened a fresh notebook. I started writing, not a diary, a playbook. Because this wasn't just a reaction, it was step one. And I was back. James called the next morning. I hadn't slept much, but my mind was clearer than it had been in weeks. I answered on the first ring. I found him, he said. Daniel Spencer, licensed realtor, Spokane County. Office in a strip mall off Pines Road. Specializes in quick turnaround listings. Short sales, distressed properties, cash buyers only. My heart sank, but my voice stayed level. He's involved? Oh, he's more than involved, James said. He's the one Rick's working with to move the house. Paperwork's already in motion, properties tagged as vacant soon. They've even staged some interior shots. They're selling it. Trying to, he confirmed. Spencer's name is all over the listing prep. But here's where it gets better. Spencer's done multiple deals with people tied to Tanya before. Cash sales, strange timing, inflated commissions that disappear in follow-up audits. Fraud? Or something very close to it, James said. He's careful, but not invisible. And get this, Rick didn't use a power of attorney, no military consent forms, just that forged signature. I stood by the window, looking out over the river. It was early, fog clung to the surface like breath on glass. I imagined Rick sitting at the kitchen table, signing papers, handing over keys, my keys. What else do you have? I asked. I pulled his recent listings, James said. Half of them were foreclosures or urgent military relocations. In 3 cases, the service member was deployed overseas, just like you. 2 ended in civil suits, 1 still pending. It wasn't just personal anymore. It was a pattern. They're running a playbook, I said quietly. Yes, James replied. And you're not their first page. My grip tightened around the phone. But I'll be their last. There was silence on the line. Then James said, I knew you'd say that. I opened my laptop and refreshed the security cam feed. Tanya walked through the hallway in yoga pants, coffee in hand. A man followed behind her. Mid-40s, slick haircut, leather briefcase. I recognized him immediately from the business registry James sent me earlier. Daniel Spencer, in my house. He stood in the living room, gesturing to the walls, talking fast. Tanya nodded, smiled. He pulled out his phone, started taking pictures. They were documenting the home like it was already theirs to give away. I turned on the volume. Rick's voice, muffled but clear. Just get it listed. Don't overcomplicate it. Spencer. Already have an investor interested. We'll underprice it and push for a fast close. Rick. Do it. I clicked record on the feed, saved the footage to 3 places. They thought I was gone. They forgot I built this house. It was all right there, in my living room. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but it didn't have to be. I could see enough. Rick stood by the window, arms folded, wearing the sweatshirt I bought him for our anniversary. Gray, with the Army logo he used to roll his eyes at. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man proud of something he hadn't earned. Daniel Spencer sat on the edge of the couch, laptop open, a folder spread across the coffee table. I recognized it, the one we used to keep our mortgage documents in. Only now it held papers I'd never seen. Fresh signatures, my name, forged in ink I didn't hold. Tanya leaned against the kitchen island, sipping coffee like she lived there. Because she did now. In the house I built, on the foundation of deployments, sacrifice, and late nights writing reports with a weapon by my side. The audio feed crackled, then kicked in. We price it low, Spencer was saying. $430, maybe $420, cash-only offers, short close window. We make it look like a motivated seller, which, technically, you are. Rick chuckled. I'm motivated, all right. Tanya laughed with him, soft and sweet. I'd heard that laugh before, once when she'd walked through my kitchen and gave my dog a treat like she belonged there. Spencer tapped his keyboard. I've got a buyer lined up, investor out of Boise. He doesn't ask questions, quick to move. We float the offer, he bites, we close. You walk away with what, 70, 80 grand? Maybe more if I shave the fees. Rick nodded. Sounds good. Just don't let her complicate things. If she finds out... She won't, Spencer interrupted. She's halfway around the world, and even if she did, what's she gonna do? Call the FBI from a war zone? That's when I smiled, because I already had. I hit record on the live feed and let it run. Every word, every number, every careless assumption that I was powerless, that I was gone. I watched Tanya lean over Spencer's shoulder, point at something on the screen. Her hair brushed his arm, and Rick didn't flinch. It didn't matter anymore. I had what I needed, a confession, a plan, a conspiracy caught on tape. When the feed ended, I saved the file to 3 separate drives, then forwarded it to James with a single line. We have them. I sat back in the hotel chair, hands steady, breath calm. The game had changed. They weren't just traitors anymore. They were criminals, and I wasn't done, not even close. James didn't waste time. The footage I sent him was enough. Not just shady behavior, not just a marital dispute. It was fraud, conspiracy, and intent, spoken aloud and recorded in my living room like no one would ever be listening. They're arrogant, James said over the phone. That helps us. I need more than help, I told him. I need accountability. You might get both, he replied. I sent the file to an agent I know at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. She's worked military-adjacent cases before. I told her this one feels bigger than a personal dispute. He paused. She agrees. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, laptop still open in front of me. The last frame of the video showed Rick laughing while Tanya poured him another cup of coffee. She said it matches patterns they've been seeing across 3 states. Deployed service members, houses sold or refinanced without consent. Always during deployment. Always with a forged signature or fake POA. How many cases? Too many, and almost all of them slipped through, until now. Until me. James's voice dropped. This might be bigger than just Rick and Tanya. Daniel Spencer shows up in 2 other ongoing cases. Always just close enough to be useful. Never close enough to get caught. Until your video. I felt my jaw clench, slow and hard. He's been doing this to other military families? Looks like it. You're not just a victim, Emily. You're evidence. You've got the kind of documentation that builds a case. Not just for fraud, but for conspiracy. What now? She wants to meet. Spokane field office. They'll want a formal statement. Sworn, detailed, and backed by what you've already sent. Fine. She also said not to approach Rick again, or Spencer, Tanya either. They want to keep things clean, quiet. I let the silence settle for a moment. Then I stood, walked to the window, and opened the curtain just enough to see the skyline. The city looked calm, ordinary. They had no idea what was coming. Set it up, I said. James didn't hesitate. Already done. You've got a 9 a.m. slot tomorrow. Agent Patel. She's sharp. You'll like her. Doesn't matter, I said. I'm not there to make friends. No, James agreed. You're there to start the fire. The agents didn't waste time. By the time I stepped into the Spokane field office, they already had a case folder thicker than mine. Agent Patel and her partner, Agent Donovan, took me into a conference room that smelled like old carpet and fresh toner. They greeted me professionally, but there was no small talk, just focus. We've been tracking Spencer for a while, Patel said, sliding the file across the table. Your footage gave us a crack. Now we're prying it open. Inside were photographs, addresses, transcripts, dotted maps across Washington, Idaho, and Oregon. Homes marked with red X's, service members' names underneath them. Same pattern, different victims. Spencer targets military families, she continued. He connects with the spouse left behind. Sometimes it's romantic. Sometimes it's just opportunity. Once that trust is built, he pushes for a refinance or a quick sale solution. Fast cash, fake urgency, forged documents. The deployed partner never knows until it's too late. I turned one page and stopped. A woman's name, Navy lieutenant. Stationed in Bahrain when her husband sold their house to one of Spencer's buyers. She came home to find her possessions auctioned and her bank account drained. Patel kept speaking, her tone even. We couldn't make it stick before. Not enough proof of coordination, not enough digital trail. But now, she pointed to the still frame of Rick and Spencer in my living room laughing over a forged deal. Now we've got more than coincidence. Donovan chimed in. We ran Rick's financials. He's received 5 lump sum transfers over the past 2 years, all just after Spencer finalized similar sales. So he's getting paid, I said. Quietly, Patel confirmed. Tanya, too. Her name comes up in 2 other fraud reports under aliases. Never formally charged, but close. I looked at them both. How many? At least 11, she said. You're number 12. But the only one with clean time-stamped video and military access logs to prove you weren't in the country when the signatures were made. I leaned back in the chair, fingers laced tightly together. They think they're safe because we're away, because we're distracted. Donovan nodded. But they didn't count on someone like you. I didn't smile. There was nothing satisfying yet. Not until it ended. What happens next? I asked. We build the case. Surveillance, subpoenas, financial tracking, quiet, controlled, no confrontations. They won't see it coming, I said. No, Patel replied. They won't. I stood, gathered my papers, walked out of the FBI office knowing something they didn't. Justice was already in motion. The first call came that evening. Rick's name lit up on my screen like a flare I didn't need. I watched it ring twice, 3 times. I didn't move. Just sat there in the dark hotel room, the glow from my laptop casting long shadows across the desk. Then it stopped. A few minutes later, the voicemail notification blinked. "Emily, we need to talk. I heard from the bank. Something's wrong with the house paperwork. Just call me, okay?" I deleted it without listening to the rest. The second voicemail came an hour later. This time, his voice was sharper, less controlled. "You freezing accounts now? What's going on? I thought we agreed to keep things civil." "Civil," I laughed. A bitter, quiet sound that barely left my throat. The messages kept coming, texts too. "Emily, don't do this. Can we please talk like adults? Tanya's freaking out. The realtor is asking questions. This isn't you." But it was me, just not the version he remembered. Not the wife who waited. Not the soldier who forgave silence. This me didn't explain herself. She didn't play defense. She let the walls close in. Every time he called, I let it ring. Every message stayed unread. Every voicemail deleted the second it landed. I wasn't going to waste words on a man who sold my house like it was a couch in a yard sale, who forged my name with the same hand he once held at the altar. James told me the FBI had eyes on Spencer's office now. Surveillance teams were watching phone records, logging movements. One wrong step and the whole web would unravel. All I had to do was nothing. Let them panic. Let them sweat. Let them trip over each other trying to clean up what couldn't be hidden anymore. I kept checking the security feed, quietly, like routine. Tanya stopped smiling so much. Rick moved differently, edgier. He paced in the living room, stared at his phone like he was waiting for it to tell him what to do. It wouldn't. Because I wouldn't. Not until it was over. They thought the silence meant they were winning. They didn't understand that silence was the sound of strategy. And I had no intention of breaking it. It happened on a Tuesday. The sun was barely up, the street still empty. I sat in my rental car parked 2 houses down, coffee going cold in the cup holder, eyes on the screen in my lap. The security feed loaded slow but clear. Tanya was in the kitchen, wearing my robe. Rick paced near the front door. Spencer had just pulled into the driveway, briefcase in hand. They were getting ready for the final walkthrough. The buyer, some nameless investor Spencer kept mentioning, was scheduled to view the house in an hour. They thought today would be a payday. It was, just not for them. A black SUV rolled to a stop outside the house. Another one behind it. Doors opened fast and quiet. Jackets marked FBI, plainclothes agents, calm, controlled movement like they'd rehearsed this. I watched Rick open the door, still mid-sentence, as Agent Patel stepped forward and said his name. He froze. Spencer, halfway out of his car, didn't even get a full breath before 2 agents had him turned and cuffed. Tanya backed away from the kitchen counter like it might save her. It didn't. 2 officers entered through the side door, calm but direct. One read her rights. She tried to speak. They told her not to. The coffee in my hand was cold by then, but I didn't notice. I didn't blink. On the security feed, I saw Rick try to protest. Hands lifted, voice rising. Patel held up a folder. Paperwork, records, screenshots. The video, maybe. His words died in his throat. It was over, not loud, not violent, just clean, surgical. The kind of justice that doesn't need to shout to be heard. I watched as they walked him out, hands behind his back, eyes scanning the street, probably wondering who had turned on him. I stayed low in the car. Just another parked vehicle in the neighborhood he no longer owned. Spencer followed, looking dazed. Tanya came last. She didn't cry. They loaded into separate cars, doors closed, engines started. I exhaled, slow and steady, like releasing a trigger. The feed was still running. Inside the house, everything looked normal. Coffee mugs on the counter, pillows in place, nothing broken, nothing screaming for attention. But something huge had shifted. The house was mine again, and this time, they couldn't take it back. James called 2 days after the arrest. They're already talking, he said. Rick first. Typical move. Get ahead of it, spin the narrative. I didn't say anything, just waited. He told the agents you were planning to leave him before deployment, said the marriage was over and the refinance was part of a mutual separation plan. I laughed, once, dry. And the forged signature? James didn't laugh. He says he had verbal consent, claimed you told him to handle things while you were gone. I closed my eyes for a second. That's what he's going with? Yeah, and Tanya's worse. She told Agent Patel you abandoned the family, that you checked out emotionally a year ago and left Rick to pick up the pieces. The pieces of what? I asked. A forged loan and a planned home sale? James sighed. They're desperate. She's leaning into the victim role hard. Said she stepped in to help Rick during a crisis. That she was keeping the house afloat while you were off. Serving your country, ironically. They're trying to flip it. They're trying to survive it, he said. But the problem is their stories don't line up. Rick says you knew about the sale. Tanya says you ghosted the marriage. Spencer says it was all Rick's idea. So the cracks are already showing. They always do. Especially when no one's loyal. I stood by the window of my hotel room, looking down at the street. People passed by like nothing in the world had shifted. But for me, everything had. I'd expected denial, excuses. But hearing how easily Rick rewrote the truth, it cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Do they think this is just going to disappear? I asked quietly. They're hoping for chaos, James said. Conflicting stories, muddy timelines, just enough confusion to blur criminal from marital. But the documents are real, the camera footage is real. So is your deployment log, your location data, your legal access trail. We've got facts, Emily. They've got fiction. I turned from the window and walked back to the desk. My laptop was open, the feed still paused on the image of Rick being led out in cuffs. Let them talk, I said. Let them lie. Already are. Good, because every lie they tell makes the truth louder. James was silent for a second, then added. Patel said something else. The way they turned on each other so fast, this isn't the first time. Not for them. I nodded slowly. Then it'll be the last. They offered me the room, but I didn't take it. Agent Patel said I could sit across from him, look him in the eye, ask him anything, but I didn't need to. I already knew the answers. And I wasn't there for closure. I was there for control. James and I met in the conference room instead. The air smelled like copier toner and cold coffee. A manila folder sat between us, sealed with a paperclip and finality. He's willing to sign, James said. The restitution agreement, the property transfer, the confession, all of it. And in exchange? I asked, though I already knew. No personal charges from you. He's hoping to reduce federal sentencing time by showing cooperation. Tanya's taking a similar deal. Spencer's going to trial. I picked up the folder, flipped it open. There it was in black and white. A full financial breakdown of everything taken from me. Every transfer, every forged form, every lie. At the end, his signature. Sloppy, rushed, but real. He admitted to the forgery, to the refinance, to the attempted sale. He confessed to accessing accounts without my knowledge, and he waived all claims to the house, to any future military benefits, to everything tied to my name. James waited quietly while I read. No pressure, just the sound of a ticking wall clock, and the quiet breath of justice settling into place. Do you want to press further? He asked when I looked up. We can. There's more we could pursue. Civil damages, defamation. I shook my head. No. You sure? Yes, I said. This isn't about punishment anymore. It's about being done. James gave a slow nod. Then we'll file this today. Property's yours again. Pensions untouched. And the record stands. I signed at the bottom of the page. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, with clarity. Afterward, I walked out of the building alone. No dramatics, no headlines. Just the weight of something old finally lifting. Rick would serve his sentence, Tanya too in her way. And Spencer, he'd go down in court, stripped of the cover he thought he owned. And me? I'd walk away with my name clean, my house mine, and the knowledge that they never saw me coming. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth to hold. And now it did. The trial was quick, not dramatic, no emotional outbursts or slamming gavels, just facts. Pulled, methodical, undeniable, the kind of silence that fills a courtroom when there's nothing left to argue. Spencer pled guilty before it even started. He folded fast. Too many documents, too many emails, too many camera angles showing him where he swore he hadn't been. His plea deal came with names, other agents, other spouses, other properties marked and moved while soldiers served overseas. A web of stolen trust, 12 families, at least. Rick sat beside his lawyer, jaw tight, eyes low. Tanya didn't look at me. She stared at the table the entire time, like it would save her from hearing the truth out loud. The judge read their sentences without pause. Rick, 8 years, financial fraud, forgery, identity theft. Tanya, 5, conspiracy to commit fraud and knowingly participating in real estate deception. Spencer got 12, no parole. I didn't cry, I didn't cheer. I just sat in the back row in a dark blazer, hands folded in my lap, and listened. James leaned over at one point and whispered, "It's done." But he was wrong. It wasn't done. Not really. Because their names would be printed, their faces documented, their actions tied to every record, every signature, every house stripped from someone who trusted them. And maybe somewhere down the line, someone would Google Rick's name before making a deal. Maybe another soldier's wife would check the fine print, hesitate just long enough to catch the lie. Maybe one fewer family would come home to find their life erased. I walked out into the daylight when the judge adjourned the room. The courthouse steps felt steady beneath me, the air sharp, clean. I inhaled and let it fill a space in me that had been hollow for months. Not revenge, just truth. And the truth had been spoken, finally. They lied. They schemed. They forged and manipulated. And they were caught. Not because I yelled. Because I watched. Because I planned. Because I refused to be the victim they counted on. Back in the parking lot, I stood for a moment, looking up at the gray sky before unlocking the door of my rental. There was no celebration waiting, no parade, just the quiet knowing that justice, when done right, doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to last. It came in a plain white envelope, no return address, just my name, handwritten in careful cursive, like someone had taken their time. The kind of writing that belonged to thank you notes and birthday cards, not something born from a courtroom. It arrived on a Tuesday, late afternoon. I'd just gotten back from the post office, picking up a shipment of tools for a deck I was helping a neighbor build. I almost tossed the envelope onto the counter with the rest of the mail, but something about it made me stop. I opened it standing there in the kitchen. Inside was a single sheet of paper, lined, slightly creased, blue ink. "You don't know me, but you saved our home." That was the first line. I read it twice. She wrote that her name was Rachel, her husband's Navy, stationed in the Gulf. She had 3 kids, a dog, and, until recently, a house that was about to disappear right out from under her. She didn't give too many details, just enough. The man involved in her situation was tied to Spencer, same company, same method, same signature tricks and forged consent forms. But after the investigation, after the FBI stepped in, because of my case, everything froze. Rachel said the sale was stopped just days before closing. Her accounts were reviewed, her documents flagged. She wrote, "I was days away from losing everything. And then I was told about you." The rest of the letter was quiet. Simple. She said thank you. Said she hoped I had found some peace after all of it. Said she didn't know how someone could go through what I did and still choose to act instead of disappear. I stood there for a long time after I finished reading. The paper felt too light for what it carried. I didn't cry, but something shifted in me again. Not like before, not anger, not strategy. It was something softer. Not every battle comes with medals. Some come with handwritten letters from women you'll never meet, who slept one more night under their own roof because you chose to fight. I pinned it to the fridge, not as a trophy, as a reminder of what it cost and what it stopped. The cabin sits 20 miles outside of Cody, Wyoming. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres, and a creek that doesn't show up on most maps. The silence here isn't empty, it's earned. I bought it 6 months after the last court date. No ceremony, no announcement, just a transfer of ownership and a drive west with everything I owned in the back of a borrowed truck. I left the house in Spokane behind. I didn't sell it right away. I just locked the doors, turned off the lights, and walked away. Some spaces can't be salvaged. The cabin came with old windows, slanted floors, and a wood-burning stove that smokes if you don't open the flue just right. I love it anyway. I patched the roof myself, built new shelving for the kitchen, refinished the porch. My hands have purpose again. I took early retirement from the Army. 17 years, 4 tours, 1 war at home. It was enough, more than enough. I handed in my papers, sat through the debriefs, and walked out of the last base gate without looking back. Now, most days begin with coffee and the sound of wind in the trees. No sirens, no shouting, just quiet. Scout's here too. She's older now, slower around the joints, but she still follows me room to room like we never missed a day. She never stopped being mine, even when the house didn't feel like home anymore. People ask sometimes if I'm angry, if I think about Rick, about Tanya, about what they took. I don't, not because it didn't matter, but because they don't anymore. I gave enough of my life to people who mistook silence for weakness, who thought a uniform made you easy to steal from. They learned otherwise. And somewhere out there, other women kept their homes. Other soldiers came back to something still standing. That's the only part that matters now. I still get letters sometimes, not many, just enough to remind me that truth echoes. Last week I got one from a Marine's wife in New Mexico. She wrote, "You didn't just fight for yourself. You fought for all of us who didn't know how." I folded it and slid it behind the one from Fort Worth. Same magnet, same spot on the fridge. This chapter isn't loud, it doesn't move fast, but it's mine. I light a fire when it gets cold. I walk the land when the nights are too long, and some mornings I just sit on the porch, breathe in the mountain air, and remember. I'm not broken. I'm just beginning again.